Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you always. Such an honor, such a blessing. Let me just say, I just want to thank you for being part of the family and for allowing me to be a part of yours. I've met so many of you. I go so many places, and so many of you are listening from all over. Hey, Bernadette, how you doing? Telfair, like welfare. You said thank you for helping me to get the pronunciation of your name. Um, helping you to pronounce it correctly. I want you to meet my morning stars over here on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, so you can see everybody here. But just from the bottom of my heart and with my whole heart, I want to thank you for allowing me and our family that you can see, and the family whom you've been talking to, and the family who's just listening together. Whether we agree with each other's views or not, you tune in, and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful, and I'm so grateful to AM 950 Radio for being our home station. So, having said that, just know that I love you all. And it is in that spirit that we're going to come today with some very interesting topics. In the second hour, we're going to talk about racial gerrymandering and whether the president is more weighted than the courts. That's something that the Speaker of the House is saying. We're moving into a dictatorial era, but we've been here for quite some time, everybody, for quite some time. But first, we're going to talk about foundational Black Americans. You know, the foundational Black American movement, the American descendants of slaves. What is that really about? And is that the right way for Black people in the diaspora, Black people in the United States and in the diaspora, to look at ourselves? I saw a very prominent actor who I think is also a Howardite, yay, and he is, his family's from Latin America. And he was asked if he was Black or not. And he said, of course I'm Black. He said, but he said, we were dropped off in South America. You were dropped off in North America. That's all. We all came over here on the same project. And, but some Black Americans do not quite see it that way. And Attorney Mark Fancher said, well, this is part of a tradition in which we other people in the United States of America, and maybe we are doing that too. So I want to talk about that, because really the first, white Americans, white people in Europe have their own fights, right? Mark and Tio, they, really the most cultivated, the most cultured have been the French. They've been, the Anglo-Saxons. When you came to the United States, they were the white people. And not the Italians, not the Germans, not. And you kind of got, you graduated into whiteness. And it's just a whole mixed bag. It's a game that is played on everybody. In the meantime, I don't care where you came from, your Social Security check is late or it might not come. The house that you thought you could get, well, that's not happening for this generation. You just keep on going. We've got to talk about this. And all of this within the context of a debate that is raging in the Black community about foundational Black Americans, Black people who are descendants of American slaves. And Attorney Mark Fancher has a very, very interesting take on this in this wonderful essay that he's written. And I'm going to be posting it, The Folly of So-Called Foundational Black Americans. Before I get to that, let me please ask you to meet me over on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, as you're doing right now. Hey, Andre. Hey, Snowman. Hey, Mike. Bernadette was up first. That's right. Miss Wanda down there in North Carolina, sending you all so much love. Snowman, where are you? Everybody let me know where you are. Mike, where are you? And please go to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, like and subscribe there, and continue to share the show. Meet me on Blue Sky, santitajackson.bsky.social, santitajackson.bsky.social, and become my friend there. Santita Jackson and Friends on Facebook. That's the only place where I can get friends. Please go there, not to the Santita Jackson landing page. No, 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 no. I need you at the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page. So let's get right to it. I was struck by this. Oh, I'm also on X at Santita J. Yes, I'm still over there. Yeah, like a lot of people. Okay, so there we go. The folly of so called foundational Black Americans. You begin like this: things have gone all wrong, you've written. It was supposed to have been a repetition of the biblical Passover, although Elon Musk's Trump's angel of death was to sweep through the land dispensing healthy doses of misery, the homes of families displaying red MAGA baseball caps on their doorposts were to be spared the devastation of mass layoffs, canceled farm contracts, loss of veteran services, and Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid uncertainties. Only the others, the coloreds, the immigrants, the woke people, they were supposed to feel the pain. But to the shock and amazement of many white MAGA many white MAGA loyalists, well, they are catching hell too. And you said, but othering, this othering is not unique to this generation. It's not unique to the white, those really people in the MAGA crowd, because you saw many black men, many Latino men became part of that too. And then some of them have had wake up calls themselves, right? And you're saying, wait a minute, everybody's getting a wake up call. But what about where are you coming from? Because now I think maybe since President Obama, many blacks now want to know, where are you from? And being from Chicago, Tio Hardiman, Violence Interrupters, and of course you are, the name of your book, Tio?
Yeah, Interrupting Gun Violence, the Public Health Approach.
And of course on WVON radio every Sunday morning from 6 to 7 a.m. Central Standard Time. And brilliant author and thought leader, attorney Mark Fancher. You said, wait a minute. When you look at this foundational Black American question, it is an othering that is really endemic to the American experience. And we need to be very, very, very careful. Since President Obama, many black people now want to know, okay, so whoa, where are you from? Because he would tell you, well, wait a minute, I'm not a product of the experience of people who've been enslaved, which is true. He said, my mother's from Kansas, and my white grandparents, I was raised with them, and my father's people, they're from Kenya. And he said, now my wife, yes, me, no. I thought that was interesting, but it was true. And yet we're all tied together. But since that time, you see Black people really pushing on that. So talk to me about the folly of particular this particular discussion. Attorney Mark Fancher.
Yeah, this is in some ways very painful because it's very clear to me and to many that the people who are involved in this movement, many of them are quite sincere. Many of them are absolutely convinced that they're doing something that is very helpful to Black people in this country. And they are very fervent and vigorous and militant in their defense of this concept. But if you look at this within a historical context and look at the full dimensions of it, what becomes apparent, at least to me, is that they're being played, that there is strategic and cynical use of some history that has existed in this country for purposes of dividing Black people, making them more of a minority than they are, and making it much easier to control and dominate them. And just to put it in some context, if you look at the history of how communities have interacted in this country, you will find that, as you made reference to, when this country first started, not everybody was white who came from Europe. It was only those who came from England, Anglo-Saxons, who were regarded as white. When people started coming from other countries in Eastern Europe and other places, whether it was Poland or Ireland or Italy, or Greece or any of these places, these were not considered white people. They were subject to discrimination in various forms, and they became white only when it became apparent that it was necessary for there to be more white people. And so they were granted white status and white privilege. But part of being white meant that you had to do to others what had been done to you. In the same way that Irish and the Italians were kicked around and abused before they got white status, now it was their turn to kick around and abuse other people, most particularly Black people, and indigenous people and other people of color. They were not white. They did not have white privilege and white status, and so therefore they were the others and they were to be abused. That's the tradition. And I made reference in the article to the fact that, particularly in Northern Ireland, where people have been dealing for hundreds of years with the worst imperialist practices by England, in their country, and they've been waging relentless struggle. And they have watched very carefully what the British have done elsewhere, most particularly in Africa. And they've recognized that the things that they were doing to Black people in Africa and that they were doing in other places were things that they had tried out on the Irish. And they knew that there was a natural solidarity between the Irish and between African people, and they championed their causes. But even Irish, when they came over to this country, once they got white privilege, once they got white status, it was necessary for them to prove that they were deserving of being white. And so they became as racist as any other white people. They used their privilege and status to abuse Black people at every opportunity. And much to the consternation and disappointment of people who were still in Ireland, who still get it, who still understand that it makes no sense to for one oppressed people to oppose another oppressed people.
Could you stop right there for a hot second? Because I don't know if we, Dr. LaShawn Latrice, a brilliant community organizer and a community psychologist, and Theo Hardiman, a radio talk show host, someone who actually ran for governor here and almost pulled 30% of the vote. And so, and everybody here. And so I just, when you go to England and you hear members of parliament who are from Northern Ireland, as you so importantly push out, they are to the left of us. And when you go to Northern Ireland, when you see they identify their heroes in the freedom struggle are the heroes from here, Dr. Latrice, Theo Hardiman. I mean, I've been there with Reverend, and tens of thousands of people will pour out just to hear him speak. And someone there traced that, I think my father's great grandfather, Mr. Sizemore, my great grandfather Sizemore, is from Northern Ireland. And you're a son of Ireland. And they did that. I mean, and for them, you are part of the struggle. Because when they came here, many of them were put in peonage. And so, and they not only are confused, but it bothers them, Attorney Mark Fancher, to see their Irish brothers and sisters become white in America. It's a disappointment to them because they said, you don't understand the power that we're fighting. Now you've been co-opted. What can I do with you? I mean, you see on the murals, Angela Davis, Kwame Nkrumah, Martin Luther King, Reverend. I mean, you see Trayvon, you see George Floyd. I mean, you see that's their identification in Northern Ireland. It's important. I think it's important, Mark, for us to really understand that really across the world, that's why, the Palestinians identify with Black people. It's just that when you get to the United States, you are forced to choose, right? I mean that's what happens. It happens to everybody here when they get here. And I just wanted you to dig down on that a little bit because I think that that's something that we miss, Attorney Fancher.
Oh, we definitely do, and it's true that globally, uh, there are any place where there are oppressed people, they have watched the struggles of Black people in this country and the suffering and the challenges that we've dealt with, and they have identified with us without question. We have, and historically, had friends and allies all over the world. You know, people who have done everything to try and support and bolster our struggle. You know, even during Hurricane Katrina, when we were left, you know, defenseless and facing death on a mass level, the world rallied to our support. The Cuban government had an entire air uh, hangar,
Mhm.
aircraft hangar, filled with hundreds and hundreds of doctors that they wanted to bring into the southeastern United States to provide assistance to people who were struggling. And George Bush would not let them come in.
Right.
We had situations where Venezuela was going to provide us with poor Black communities with reduced rate and free heating oil.
Mhm.
We have had, you know, you saw the outpouring of support of people around the world when George Floyd was killed. You know, thousands of people in the streets who identify and understand our suffering and our struggle, and who were ready to stand with us. I've said in the past that the Nicaraguan government under the Sandinistas, when they took power in 1979, within just a short time after they had overthrown Anastasio Somoza, a brutal dictator there, and they began their revolution, one of the first things that they did was to make Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday a national holiday. And they did that before the United States did it. You ask any revolutionaries, you know, in the global South, who they take their cue from, many of them will say the Black Panther Party.
Mhm.
And in fact, there were versions of the Black Panther Party all over the world, in India, in Australia, among those who are indigenous to that territory, and all over the place. And so there has always been this global solidarity. Okay, when Michael Brown was killed and you know, the city went up in flames, the Palestinians were texting instructions to Black Lives Matter activists about how to deal with tear gas. So the last people who should buy into an anti-immigration program, which is designed to target and vilify people from other countries, are Black people who have enjoyed the support of the world. And so, you know, I've outlined the experience of white people in this country at the earliest. A different history existed for Black people, okay? Because Black people in Africa belonged to different clans and different ethnic groups and different tribes. They spoke different languages and all of that. But once the Middle Passage began, once they were on those slave ships, and they realized that all of them were in the same boat, regardless of their ethnic identities, regardless of their clans, regardless of their families, they began a tradition of saying, we don't care where you come from. As long as you're Black, we're all part of the same family. And that is true from the very outset. On the plantations, they were not asking questions about where did you come from. You know, there were many people who came onto plantations, you know, they went from Georgia to South Carolina and vice versa. There were some that were brought over from the Caribbean. There were some, a few, who actually came directly from Africa. But all of them, because of their common suffering and their shared struggle, understood that they were all in that same boat, and that they should all band together and form one community in order to resist the oppression that they were all facing. And that has been the tradition. There has, even up through the 20th century, if you look at the Harlem Renaissance, Marcus Garvey was at the center of it. This man was from Jamaica, and he talked about uniting African people of African descent all over the world to come together as a powerful force. And people in this country rallied to that. All over the world, African people rallied to his call. You look at all of the people who made up the Harlem Renaissance, including Claude McKay, an important writer from Jamaica. Okay, you look at all of the people all up into the 21st century, whether it's Harry Belafonte, Kwame Ture, Shirley Chisholm. We can go on. We can list any number of people who came into this country not to try and exploit or to take advantage or to jump the line in front of people who had a different lineage. They came over here to become part of the community, and they suffered with us. They struggled with us. They died with us. They shed their blood with us. And they have contributed mightily to the support and the uplift and the advancement of people in this country. So when you have a movement that comes along, like the ones that we've been talking about, American descendants of slaves are foundational Black Americans. And what they're basically suggesting is that there is this group of people, which is this group is pure, that this people is purely American, that this group of people, had their ancestors enslaved in this country, and that from that time up to now, they alone have made the advancements that we as a community claim, that they alone are responsible for whatever uplift has occurred within the Black community, that all these other people coming from other countries are trying to take advantage of the struggles of their ancestors. They have to understand that there has never been such a people. There is no pure group of people who are purely of this country and have not been influenced in one way or another, or impacted in one way or another by those from other countries, other parts of the African diaspora, or Africa itself. Because from the very outset, even on the plantation, Africa itself was heavily influencing and impacting the culture of these people, whether it was with respect to how soul food developed and how it was flavored and seasoned and prepared, the forms of worship, the forms of social organization, the style that we carried ourselves in, the clothing, everything, all of it was driven by Africa, all of it. And then later there was Caribbean influence. So we're all one group of people, and we've had a Pan-African tradition. We've had an internationalist tradition because we've understood one basic fact, and I'm just talking about politics here. We exist within a structure, a political structure, where the basic premise is that the majority rules. That's supposed to be a fundamental principle of democracy. Those who are Black in this country start off with a major handicap because we, in terms of our numbers, are already a minority. And so unless we have other people who are on our side, who vote with us, then we're destined to lose every single time, because it's the majority that rules, the majority that wins. So when you see a movement or a concept that says you're already a minority, but now we want to make ourselves even more of a minority than we were to begin with, you have to question it. You have to wonder, why is it that somebody's pushing an idea like this when just the opposite has been the focus of our political thrust up until this movement? We've always said Black people, we expand the numbers of Black people. There was always a slogan, we may be a minority in this country, but in the world, we're the majority. Mm-hmm. There's always been an understanding of that. Don't let white people push you around and tell you that you're a minority, because they're the minority. If you look at Black people all over the world, we're the majority. People of color are the majority. So when you find somebody who's saying, no, reject that concept, make yourself more of a minority than you already are, and then you expect that because you're more of a minority than you were, that you're somehow going to get some sort of advancement from that, it's totally illogical. And so that's one of the fundamental problems with the concept, just on a practical level. But on a deeper level, on a moral level, you know, the idea of excluding people, othering people, is incompatible with our tradition as a people. We have been a people that have welcomed others, have embraced others. That's been our tradition. We understand exclusion and we understand oppression. And for us to copy or emulate those who have a different moral code, those who don't understand, don't have a spiritual dimension that we have, is really the wrong way to go. And we really have to wonder about it when we see the enemies of our community, the announced enemies of our community, embracing this concept. So Ann Coulter, who's a white nationalist, by any definition, was interviewed at a certain point by Vivek Ramaswamy. And during that interview, what she said is, well, you're a pretty brilliant guy. And, it's interesting that you're running for president because you really are very talented and you're very brilliant, but I can't vote for you because you're Indian. Now, that's out of her mouth. She's saying that. Ann Coulter also adopted the foundational Black American concept and said that one of the reasons that people should not vote for Kamala Harris is because she's she's not a foundational Black American. Now, if she's pushing this idea, it's got to make you wonder about why Black people who are thinking clearly would want to do this. And I think that it's as I said before, it's been very cynically introduced, and it's been wrapped in the cloak of Black nationalism in a way, and Black pride and Black culture that makes it appealing to people who are unsuspecting and who don't see the full dimensions of it.
Let me ask you, T.O., do you have a response to what you've heard thus far?
Oh, without a doubt. This is what you call a real deep conversation, because when you think about white supremacy, you think about white thought and African world thought. What happens is that, you remember in the mid 1800s, you had the Berlin Conference where the European nations came together to divvy up the different countries in Africa, right? And the Germans. And then you think about the genocide that took place and atrocities that took place in Rwanda, where many, probably 100-some years ago, German archaeologists and scientists divided the Tutsis, the Hutu, and the tribes over there as if they were different people, but they were all the same people. So you got this white thought that Black folks never had a right to really be seen as human beings. So it's that white mindset, okay? And so when we talk about what happened in the evolution of everything during the slave era here in the Americas and throughout, the continent of America, actually, because in the diaspora and all those different areas also, but here in the United States, you have to understand the Irish people, Italian people, English, everybody had to fight for their rights or whatever the case may be. But when African American people began to fight for their rights, a lot of people looked at it as if it was something that was like unheard of. It shouldn't be happening, because you have to understand we were cast out to be only 3/5 human based on white thought. That's white thought, okay? And what King Leopold did over in the Congo. So this, like I say, this conversation is really deep, and I'm gonna bring it up to speed a little bit too, because I'm with you all the way, Dr. Fancher. I'm with you 1,000%. And the reality is that me being a light-skinned brother, I just want to say this. I felt like I was a recipient of unnecessary type of, labeling sometimes, because I never had an issue with my complexion or the issue with a person that was darker than me. I got along with everybody. My mother's a dark-skinned Black woman. Father was a light-skinned Black man. But when I was growing up, a lot of people, he light-skinned, he's this and that. They think they too good. Now, I never thought I've spent a lot of time trying to be accepted as a real brother. I'm not gonna use the other word, just a real brother. Then I didn't have to do that. I didn't have to do that because I was born a real brother, So what happens is that, it's all over the place. But see, the reason why we as African-American people, as far as my theory, the reason why we're so divided now, it was based on plantation politics, because a lot of our people wanted to do whatever they can do to get off their plantation. And they would actually turn on their own people, and they want to be sitting up on the porch with the master, or sitting in the rocking chair wearing some old hand-me-down clothes. Malcolm X said it best. When the master's sick, the brothers say, hey, we sick. We both sick, right? But the moral of the story, if you know the psychology, that's why it's important for African-American, all people to know the psychology, how European people, the word I'm looking for, Santita, exocentrism. You know, exocentristic.
Ethnocentrism. Mm.
You know, ethnocentrism. There you go. The people
Ethnocentrism.
that feel that they're superior to other people, and it's going to be that way because we never got. Now look at all the inventors in the African American community, all the philosophers. You can go all the way back to Mali. You go to Timbuktu. You go to all the African, even in the Moors of Spain. We have such a rich history of African philosophers, scientists, and doctors, but we still don't get our props in American history. When you talk about American history, we talk about the slave era. We should begin the process of teaching about the real era, the Harlem Renaissance. We learn a little bit about that, but you got to dig deeper as an African American person to find out all this information that I'm talking about right now. That's the reason why I designed a course at North Park University to teach the history of Africa before the colonizers. I think it's very important. So we study all the African countries before colonization, and see, therefore you get some of your answers there. But Ethiopia is one of the oldest African countries that was never colonized, right? And I know you talked about Marcus Garvey. So this conversation to me is a much needed conversation on a higher level because, you know, I see myself as a Black African-American intellectual thought leader as well. It's not just talking about the violence, not just talking about what's going on. We are world thought leaders, and we don't get our props for that. Not that we looking for somebody to kiss our ring or nothing, but we think about the world just the same as everybody else. And that's another reason why I give credit and respect to President Ibrahim Toure, over in
Burkina Faso.
Burkina Faso, because he's a young brother that's taking that country, taking the bull by the horn and making the necessary changes for the people. And he's showing Black, like integrity. That's what he's showing, Black integrity. He's showing that an African leader can actually look out for the people. We don't have to be cast into a mindset where Black leaders are corrupt. Because, when you think about Nigeria, they always talk about the corruption, right? You think about different African countries, even what happened to Muammar Gaddafi. That's what Ibrahim is doing right now over in Burkina Faso. And 2 African countries did not want to support him. I know for sure it was Uganda. I believe it was Rwanda as well, because he was trying to form an African nation as far as the money, the African Bank.
Union.
And, yeah, 2 countries.
He was trying to have one gold, a dinar, their dollar. And he was just about there.
Yes.
And then he was killed.
There you go.
And the leader of Burkina Faso has said, I'm very clear.
Yes.
That what I'm doing could get me killed, but I'm willing to give my life to and for my people, and because in real time that is very real. I'm sorry, not to interrupt, but
you're good.
Because I hear you.
I just wanted to put that out there because I respect his leadership, and he has the same type of mind that I would have, because I wouldn't worry about putting my life on the line if it was going to benefit my nation as a whole. I'm not going to put my life on the line benefiting individuals, but my nation, my people. I got that. I wouldn't think twice about it, right? But I just wanted to, provide this educational journey here, because that's what we're up against. We're up against white superiority-minded type of people versus what we know as African people about our ancestry, about how rich our past was and how it's rich today. All the resources in the continent of Africa. A lot of countries are depending on our resources in a major way. I mean, people just don't talk about this stuff. So that's why, I'm not going to over talk it, but that's where I'm at with it. And that was a real solid article, Dr. Fancher. I want to get your name right. And the thing about it, that was some solid information because we still have a long way to go over here, Santita, in my opinion. I'm talking on an educational level.
But I think it's maturing.
Yeah.
And and understanding that in order that we be conquered, we have to be divided, Attorney Fancher. And that's why what was interesting about the article, and I'm going to pivot to you, Dr. LaShawn Latrice, you helped us to see, Attorney Fancher, the that there are whites who are in solidarity with us.
Yeah.
All over the world. They see what is going on, and they're pulling for us because they see that we are the people of Northern Ireland have a more onerous deal with the British Crown than the Haitians have with the French. They are paying reparations to the Crown also. And when you get over there, if you hear If you hear the political figures from Northern Ireland, look, I fell in love with this man. He's a dear friend of mine. He's a minister of parliament over there today. And the way all the things that he was saying, my mother looked at me. I said, "Oh, I found my husband. I had to come over here to find him." Because he was so clear, because my politics are that way. I want someone, and I admire and respect people who operate on principle. But Dr. LaShawn Latrice, your thoughts about this, because this has been a discussion that many people are having, and we hear it in the community today. And I think I think I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I have been talking to people for the past couple of weeks on the many changes that are taking place, and this article is so enlightening. I just want to share it with as many people as I can, because when people see the dynamics of what's actually happening, yes, people recognize that it looks like those who thought they supported an administration is now they're now attacking, or they're upset. But when I look at the breakdown of these principles that are pointed out in what Attorney Fancher has put together in this article, I thought about that whole pursuit of democracy. And when you're talking about getting democracy, or what it looks like something to us, but it looks like something else to other people. And so what we think about is, we're thinking equality, we're thinking fairness, we're thinking equity. And then there's this group of people that's like, no, democracy is this, it's white privilege. It's us taking the supreme approach to everything, and that we're beneath them. What I appreciate, though, is the frankness in what's being discussed. Because if we don't have these intentional discussions, people won't become more and more aware of what is really taking place around us. And because many of us are on the grassroots, we're in the thick of it. We see things every day. I mean, I have conversations with people on a regular basis, and I have been ever since the new administration took over. We talk about these things that are taking place, and how one group of people thought it was going to benefit them more than the other people. And now it just looks like everything is being turned upside down. And now the fear and the faith has mixed, and people don't really know which way to look, but it's like humanity is now being compromised. And so I appreciate conversations like this, which point out that we really have a long way to go when it comes to uniting on common ground with what's actually taking place, and what's going to actually be the change that makes a difference for, us and for our future generations.
Well, or maybe we've been detoured temporarily, Attorney Fancher, because the fact is, I think you've made the point. He's made the point, Dr. Latrice and Theo Hardiman, that our history has pointed us in the right direction. My mother's father went back to the West Indies. He was a Garveyite, and he found the racism in the United States to be so abhorrent that he left and never came back. He just said no. Zora Neale Hurston taught at my mother's mother's grammar school. And what was interesting about the Harlem Renaissance that you mentioned, T.O., was that you had Black people from the diaspora. Hazel Scott's family was West Indian.
Right.
Claude McKay. You had Black people who were bringing everything that we had been through all through the diaspora, and we poured it into our art, whatever medium we used. And it was just Black expression. It was a renaissance, because it was really a coming together. Everything that we experienced everywhere, Mark Fancher, we were like, this is who we are. I speak English, but I'm not English. Many of us speak Spanish, but we're not Spanish. And but even then, I mean, this is all part of the experience. I mean, so where do we take this conversation, Attorney Fancher? Because the fact is, many of us are. This is a conversation that is raging, and I'm going to continue to have this conversation with you and with others because it has gained a lot of traction. I'm just wondering if it's making a lot of headway and moving not just our people, but all of our people, that is, all human beings, forward. Is it helpful?
Yeah, I think this is where we go. We've got to tell some hard truths. And the first hard truth is that everybody is obsessed with Africa, but African people in this country. The United States government has established something called United States Africa Command, which is an operation that has basically locked down the entire African continent with military personnel who kind of lurk in the shadows. And they, because of the optics of US military personnel visibly trying to control Africa, what these people do is they direct Africa's armies in missions and operations which are intended to ensure that Africa's natural wealth, mineral wealth, and other wealth remains in the hands of foreign exploiters, Western imperialists, the United States government, France, and others. Okay? And so they're obsessed with it. China is obsessed with Africa. Russia is obsessed with Africa. The only people who say, I don't want anything to do with Africa are some people of African descent in this country, who say, no, I'm an American. I'm a foundational Black American. I don't want anything to do with Africa. Okay. There's a reason that they have planted that idea in our community, because they don't want us to be part of that. Africa has such potential, and they know it. Africa has it has more oil. There's more oil in Africa than in the so-called Middle East. There is gold there. There are diamonds there. There's cobalt and chromium, magnesium, every conceivable mineral that's needed for Western industry. Even coltan, which is what they need in order to make electronic devices and cell phones and things like that. All of it is in Africa, and African people in Africa control practically none of it. It's all controlled by multinational corporations and right-wing kinds of forces. And so if Africa and people who associate with Africa, who are connected with Africa, united globally to boot all of the foreign exploiters out and took control of Africa's resources, and not only that, consolidated the entire African continent into one country, not Nigeria and Liberia and Uganda and Mozambique, but one country, flying one flag with a socialist economy. It would be a superpower that had no equal on this planet. It would call the shots. And so for those in this country who say, well, them Africans, they don't care about us, they'd never do anything for us, they wouldn't have to. Just the mere existence of the United States of Africa would inspire such fear and intimidation among those who would even dare to think of harming in any way somebody who is of African descent. Just the mere existence of it would change our reality in major ways. And our exploiters and our oppressors know that. And so they have been engaged in trying to create division among the African world to prevent it. If you want to see the value of unity, Tio made reference to Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger came together, 3 countries united in the Sahel. And when the French and the United States said, we're sending our military in there to whoop you, we're coming in there to get you because we don't like the fact that you threw out a puppet leader from Niger. We're coming to get you. Those 3 countries stood shoulder to shoulder, and they said, we dare you to come in here. If you try and touch Niger, you're going to have to deal with Burkina Faso. You're going to have to deal with Mali. And come in here and just try it. And the United States and France backed down, just in the face of the unity of those 3 countries. Imagine if 54 African countries stood together like that. And imagine if the brothers and sisters in the United States of America said, if you touch Africa, we're going to burn your cities down. Just imagine the power that flows from that type of unity. And so that's the power that those who oppose our interests want to suppress. They want to keep us confused. And I understand the appeal of American descendants of slaves and foundational Black America. I understand the appeal because so many of our people are desperate. They're really, really struggling. And so from day to day, when they're just trying to put food on the table, and when they're trying to just keep a roof over their heads, when they see people from other countries come in and they perceive them to be competing for the scarce resources that are here, then anybody that comes along and says, well, we're going to get rid of this competition, then that has a certain appeal. But it's self-destructive.
But hold on, but Mark, but also part of the challenge you have is how we're divided from each other from jump. Because then you have people who come here who are told that we are inferior.
That's right.
And who are told that, because I've had many conversations with many of our African brothers and sisters from different parts of the world, but particularly those from Africa, who'll say, I don't know what's wrong with you all. You're so self-destructive. You're so violent. You're always getting arrested by the police. I said, sadly, when you get shot, you'll get it. I'm not wishing that on you. I'm just saying, if you really understood, if you don't understand Rosewood, if you don't understand Tulsa, if you don't understand the race riots, if you don't understand what happened on these plantations, if you don't understand those things, you really do not understand the United States. And you will, if you keep on living here, you're going to have your wake up moment. I don't want it to come to that, because more than likely, Dr. Latrice and Tio, you won't survive it. Black Americans are miracles. Those of us who've been here this long, but if you look at the whole diaspora, I mean, it has been a very hard experience for everyone. And when we, as you say, Attorney Fancher, pull our resources and our collective experiences together, we win. That's how we win. And not only Black people, the whole world wins. You see Northern Ireland pulling for us. You see the Palestinians pulling for us. Mark, it was nothing like going to Nicaragua and to the Palestinian territories when Reverend was running for president. And even before, the fact that you had a Black American leader who was championing them, because he did that before he ran for president. They were like, Viva Jesse, thank you, we love you. I think we have to understand what we mean to people all over the world, because the most powerful empire in the history of the world has been the United States. And whenever we have fought here, we have won, Mark. People respect that. Everybody does. But, I only have about 10 minutes left here, but oh boy, I promise you, everybody, we will continue to have this conversation.
Yeah, good conversation.
And expand it, because I think that Attorney Fancher is on to something. And I think it could be a really healing conversation, Dr. Latrice. Doesn't have to be a contentious one, because, this is what we're seeing down at the city council here in Chicago. When people are saying, no, you don't understand because you're not from Chicago. You're not an American Black person. And it's like, wait a minute, hold it, stop. What is your takeaway from this? And I've posted a link, everybody. And please read this and spread it wherever you go, share it. Dr. Latrice, a couple of minutes for you.
I just think, just like you said, to recap, we have a long way to go, but we need to intentionally make these conversations more present in our homes, in our workplaces, in the communities where we serve, where we work, just even with our peers and some who might not necessarily share our same views. It would be very good to get perspectives from across the table. Just because there's so much division being spewed across everywhere. Mm-hmm. But now you see, it's almost like the enemy has turned on himself. And with all that taking place, it's created an atmosphere of anxiety for people. And I just assure people that there's nothing bigger than God out there. So no matter what things look like, you always have to have hope and always have to have faith. And so that's what I'm riding on. And anybody that talks to me, that's the end of my conversation. I'm just going to have to look to where my help comes from.
Well, amen. The song, without God, I could do nothing.
That's right. That's
And
right.
as one of my godmothers said to me, let nothing and no one have power over you but God. We can make it through this moment. This moment does not fill me with fear. It fills me with hope because that means we are closer to the promised land than we think.
That's right.
Let's just not worship the fatted calves, because that's what we've been doing, and the idols. We got a little freedom, and we got a little foolish. Well, we're being brought back to front. Tio Hardeman,
Yeah,
couple
I
of
just want
minutes,
to
of
say,
course, on WVON, 6 to 8 a.m., 6 to 7 a.m., excuse me,
right.
6 to 7 a.m. Central Standard Time, WVON.com. Please tune in, tune in, tune in. Your thoughts, Tio Hardeman.
Just the strengths and the resilience of African people worldwide. Think about this for a moment. The same people that were stolen from Africa and sent to the United States, that were forced into slavery, are the same people that fought for their independence and inspired African countries. Because if you look at that turbulent era, civil rights era, the Black Power era, that era there inspired African countries to fight for their independence. There's a timetable right there that you can look at. You know, the 60s, like a lot of countries gained their independence. Kwame Ture, he should be, basically he's a international figure already, but he should be always celebrated. What he did over in Ghana and some of the leaders of Africa, man, my man in Patrice Lubamba, Stephen Biko, we know about Nelson Mandela, but there's so many unsung heroes out there. But our people that were forced into bondage came back 2.5 centuries later to help inspire and liberate our brothers and sisters in Africa, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing if you ask me, because who would have that type of fortitude? And all the white people, that the white supremacist thinking type of people back in that era, they were really, really starstruck. I'll just use that word. They say, well, I thought these people weren't human. I thought they knew we were human. Don't get me wrong, but what they put out there, the lie they told everybody, and we dispelled all the rumors, all the lies, all the myths, and we helped build we built the United States, and we invented a lot of products that are keeping the United States going even today. So everybody should be on an even keel, but some people do not want that, because I'm about humanity. I'm about all of humanity. That's the only thing I have to say here. But I really, like Dr. Latrice said, if we can learn this history, educate young people as they're growing up, they would be more intellectual thought leaders, won't just be stuck on what's happening on 63rd Street, or stuck what's happening in Compton or in Detroit or Memphis or St. Louis. Their mind will be able to travel because they have this history, this knowledge, okay?
Amen. Attorney Mark Fancher.
Yeah, I'm going to finish with a really quick little story.
Yeah.
Back in the 18th and 19th centuries, there were lots of illegals that were flooding into northern cities. And the people who lived in those cities were very upset about it. They claimed that these people were competing for jobs. They said that these people were criminals, that they were thieves and murderers and rapists. And they said that these people needed to be shipped out of the country. The people that were flooding in as illegals were those Africans who had run away from plantations. They were the ones that were being talked about like that. They were the ones who were being treated like that when they arrived in northern cities. So we as a people should never, given our experience, should never look at people who are escaping persecution and hardship and poverty, most of it caused by the US government in their countries. We should never treat them like white people in the North treated our ancestors. That is that's a shame, and it is no credit to us to dishonor our ancestors in that way.
Amen, everybody. We have to have solidarity. As my father says, red, yellow, black, brown, and white, we are all precious in God's sight. And when we come together, and when we really, really, really understand what is going on, you will agree that there's a floor beneath which no human being should fall. My pastor used to say that, Reverend Clay Evans used to say that, I've never seen God make a mouth that God couldn't feed. He didn't say a black mouth, white mouth, yellow mouth, red. No, no, no. I've never seen God make a mouth that God couldn't feed. So we have to fight for each other. And stop othering your brother. Don't do it. We don't win that way. You win by inclusion. The only thing you should exclude is evil. Beyond that is just God. So let's talk about racial gerrymandering in the next hour. But I want to thank you, Attorney Mark Fancher, for always being such a light, such a brilliant light, and really helping to illuminate that which is true and that which is fine and good and the best in all of us. Go to the LA Progressive, everybody. And I sent you the link, but go to the LA Progressive and pass the article along and have some discussions about it. Have some discussions. We're going to continue to have this discussion because there are a lot of people who feel a lot of different ways, but the only way that we're going to work our way through this is to talk to one another. So sending you all so much love. Attorney Mark Fancher, T.O. Hardiman, Dr. LaShawn Latrice, sending you so much love. The next hour of the Santita Jackson Show coming up in just a couple of minutes.
All right.